Welcome back. It's Jason Walter here. Here's your latest California housing market update. I'm going to provide a detailed analysis from the California Association of Realtors report that was announced about a week ago regarding what we're seeing right now for the month of May. I'm going to provide a detailed analysis regarding home prices over the past several years and, of course, changes going back to 2010 as well. So, of course, I have a lot to share. This is a monthly video I make for you guys regarding the California real estate market. This actually was released on June 20th, so my apologies for this late update, but I do want to make this video because some of you guys have been asking about what's going on in California. Of course, I make videos regarding the California housing market. I make 3 videos per month regarding what we're seeing here. So here's their press release from the California Association of Realtors. I did not even read it. So instead, here is a slideshow that they actually provided as well. I actually revised this a little bit. Not revised it. I excluded some of the slides because this slide is about 60 pages long, and I decreased that by about half that. So here's the report for May. So here's a snapshot overall we're seeing right now. And by the way, today's video is only looking at nationwide trends, not nationwide, statewide trends in California for existing single-family detached houses. That's a fancy way of saying excludes brand new home construction. So we're only looking at older houses that are not new, and also for single-family only as well. Detached meaning a single family house versus a condo that is attached to the next unit down, right? Anyways, so this is for single family existing houses only. So for the month of May, the most recent data we have from them, there was 289,460 existing home sales. This, by the way, is seasonally adjusted and also annualized. So based on the current sales pace for May, they analyze that number and also do a seasonal adjustment as well. So the current sales pace for May, if we continue that for the next 12 months, we'd have approximately 289,000 closed home sales over the next 12 months. That's what a seasonally adjusted annualized rate here means. This also means that home sales on an annualized basis have decreased by 23.6% from last year's levels. So a decrease of around 24% in home sales. However, though, compared to 1 month ago, home sales increased by almost 10%. And more on that here in a little bit. Asking prices, or not asking prices, the median sold price, I should say, again, for only single family houses only, existing houses as well, $836,110. And that, by the way, is a decrease of 6.4% from 1 year ago. So the median sold price is down by 6.4%. Again, stay tuned because I have a lot more to share regarding home prices in today's video. Meanwhile, the month supply is only at 2.1 months. That's flat compared to May of 2022. A very low amount of housing supply in California right now. Also, days in the market. This is a time frame when a home seller lists their house for sale until when they accept an offer from a home buyer. So the average days in the market, or I should say the median days in the market, is at 17 days. That's an increase of 54.5% year over year. So let's talk a little bit more regarding home sales in the state of California. Because again, it decreased by 23.6% year over year, but a giant increase of 9.8% compared to April this year. As you can see in 2022, we saw a huge fallout in home sales, especially in the second half of the year. And also this year, even though they did increase by almost 10% in May compared to April, we're still at very, very low levels. When looking at pre-pandemic levels, at 289,000, that's more or less on par with the lowest levels going back to 2008. But having said that, at 289,000, that's still the highest level in about 8 months, according to the California Association of Realtors. Now, here's something interesting as well, because this is something that they have been reporting for several months now, because sales for luxury houses have been decreasing big time especially compared to more affordable houses in California. So for the month of May, the year-over-year change for houses that sold for over $2 million was a decrease of 35%, the biggest year-over-year decrease in each of these price segments here. Also, we saw big decreases in the range of $750,000 to $1 million and $1 million to $2 million, down by 26%. However, when looking at home sales in the range of $400,000 to $499,000, it only decreased by 12%. So in other words, home sales are decreasing the most for luxury home prices in California. Also, they reported that pending home sales decreased by 21.1% from May of 2022. So down big time from 1 year ago, but not as down as much compared to the fall months last year when pending home sales fell by about 40%. It's also worth noting that even though contracts being signed between buyers and sellers are down by 21% right now, it has been improving ever since the fall months last year. Here's also something I found to be very interesting as well, because when looking at year-over-year changes in home prices as well as home sales, the story there is entirely different when looking at month-over-month changes. So again, for year-over-year changes, the biggest decreases were for houses of over $2 million. The decrease in home sales compared to May of 2022. When looking at month-over-month changes though, this May, entirely different story, because the biggest increases compared to April were actually for houses that sold for over $2 million. A huge increase of 35% in closed home sales for over $2 million compared to April. Also in the range of $1 million to just under $2 million, a giant increase of 32% as well. So that's closed home sales, but also pending home sales, which are these orange bars right here. Also big increases as well compared to decreases in the range of $400,000 to just under $1 million. So for pending home sales for the month of May, for houses over $2 million, an increase of 2.9%. For $1 million to $2 million, an increase of 6.4%. So of course, what this tells us is that because we're seeing an increase of contracts being signed for houses over $1 million, this would imply we should see more closed home sales in the luxury market in the weeks and months ahead here. Okay, let's talk about home prices, because I have a ton to share regarding home price trends, much more than the California Association of Realtors shares and support here. So again, for May, for existing single-family houses, the median sold price was $836,110, a decrease of 6.4% from May 2022, but a significant increase of 3% compared to April. So of course, what this means is that home prices have been increasing this year because we saw a big increase of 3%. And also you can see the graphic right here where we saw a gain in prices ever since March this year. But we're still down compared to last year's levels, because back in May of 2022, that was when we had all-time record high for home prices in California at just under $900,000. So that's a look at home price trends going back to 2005 in this chart right here. But here's what I want to share based on my own analysis of the California Association of Realtors data. So these two columns right here, the date and the price, is what I pulled from the website. Everything else is based on my own analysis regarding home price trends in California. So again, this May, $836,000, a decrease of 6.4% when prices 1 year ago were at $893,000. And also compared to April, we saw gains of 3%. One thing I do want to mention right off the bat is that I noticed that the California Association of Realtors revised their May 2022's number here. So the revised number is $893,200. That was a revision downward because their previous price there was $900,000. So that was actually just revised this month for whatever reason. So that's why some of these figures are going to be a little bit different compared to last month's report here. So there's a few things I want to touch on in this chart right here. Actually, there's a lot more than just a few. But again, let's look at this. So 6.4% is a decrease compared to May 2022, going from 893,000 to 836,000. However, this is only the seventh time that prices are down on a year-over-year basis in the last 11 years, excluding the onset of COVID, which of course was May of 2020. So how wild is that? The previous 7 months here are the only decreases on a year-over-year basis going back to 11 years ago. So that was the first time when prices were down compared to 1 year ago, which was in November, down by 0.6%. That's number one. Number two, this 6.4% decline is much worse than historical averages going back to 2010. I'll share some trends with you guys here in a little bit regarding that though. So that's number two. Number three, this 6.4% decrease is actually the smallest decline since February this year. Because in February, prices decreased by 4.8%. They got worse in March and actually got even worse in April, down by 8.2%. So it's a decrease of 6.4% is the smallest yearly decrease going back to February this year. So here's what I did. I want to look at the historical averages in May on a year-over-year basis going back to 2010. When I ran this analysis, which is this nerdy formula right here, prices have increased by 10.6%. That's the average May-to-May change going back to 2010. On average, an increase of 10.6%, whereas this year we saw a decrease of 6.4%, a very big decrease compared to the historical averages here. So that's year-over-year changes. Let's look at month-over-month changes though, because prices have now increased for 3 consecutive months now. So this month, the prices change from last April, I can't talk, was a gain of 3%. Again, the third consecutive monthly increases. Before that, home prices fell for 6 consecutive months. And you can see that right here because starting in September through February this year, home prices were decreasing on a month-over-month basis. But then by the time we hit March though, that completely reversed though. A huge gain in March, a gain of 7.6% from February. But this 3% increase we saw from April is actually better than the historical averages going back to 2010. So the historical averages going back to 2010 on a month-over-month basis this May is a gain of 1.8%, whereas this year we saw a gain of 3%. Now here's something you guys should be aware of as well, because again, the changes on a year-over-year basis is entirely different than the monthly changes we're seeing right now. And that is because of this right here. I looked at the trough, which was in February, when home prices were at $735,000. Now they've increased by about $100,000 over the past 4 months, and that's an increase of 14%. So the gain from February's trough, which was a 2-year low, have now increased by 14%. So because home prices have increased by about 14% from February, this is why the yearly change has actually improved this May. What I mean by that is that in April, it decreased by 8.2% and it slightly improved to 6.4%, a decline by the time we hit May. So because prices have increased since February here, the decrease from last year's highs set back in May 2022 is not as bad as the correction we saw last year. Because the decrease from the peak last year, this happens to be the year-over-year change, because the peak was back in May 2022. The decrease again is 6.4%. But this has been improving though, because when looking at price changes from May last year to the trough, which was in February, going from 893,000 to 735,000, that was a decrease of 17.7%. That was a huge decrease in home sold prices based on the correction we saw last year. But because prices have increased by 14% over the past 4 months, That's why this number right here of 6.4% is not as bad as this decrease of 17.7% we saw last year. Here's something also you guys should be aware of as well, because this decrease of 6.4% that we saw compared to 12 months ago is actually much worse than the pre-pandemic averages as well, because a change in home sold prices from May 2019 through May 2020 was a decrease of 3.7%. Back in 2018 to 2019, it was an increase of 1.7%. And also 2017 to 2018, it was an increase of 9.2%. Whereas this year, a decrease of 6.4%. So to briefly recap right here, this decline of 6.4% is much worse than the historical averages going back to 2010, which was a gain of 10.6%. Also, when looking at 2019, 2018, and 2017, this decrease of 6.4% is also much worse as well. Now, here's something that's drastically different though, because just for fun, the changes in home sold prices from May 2008 through May 2009 was a giant decrease of 31.9%. In other words, the correction we saw over the past 12 months is not even close to the giant decreases we saw back in 2008 through 2009. Big picture here, even though prices are down by about 6% year over year, it's actually much better than the 18% correction we saw from May last year to February this year. All right, I know that was a lot to cover regarding home price trends, but if you guys appreciate that analysis, then please let me know in the comment section below here. But I also want to provide a summary regarding what we just talked about regarding price trends in the California housing market. Number one, the month-over-month changes or trends show an entirely different story compared to year-over-year data. So for example, home sold prices have increased for 3 consecutive months, and they're also up by 14% since February this year. However, though, home sold prices are down by 6% from 12 months ago. Number two, even though prices have increased significantly this year, a gain of 14% since February, this 6.4% decrease since May of 2022 is still much worse than historical averages going back to 2010, as well as 2018, 19, and 2020. Number three, despite last year's correction, we're still up by about 42% compared to 3 years ago. So when looking at home sold prices from May 2020 through May 2023, even though prices decreased by about 18% last year, or I should say from the peak last year to the trough this year, they're still up by 42% over the past 3 years, which is just absolutely insane. Number four, if housing inventory remains limited, in other words, we have historically low amount of houses for sale, and if mortgage rates do not surge like they did last year, this will likely put upward pressure on prices for the second half this year. I expect to see further year-over-year decreases, but continuing to improve because prices fell off a cliff in the second half last year, but not this year. And I'm saying we're probably not going to see home prices fall off a cliff like we saw last year, because last year rates were absolutely skyrocketing and our housing market was frozen, and we saw a huge increase of housing inventory. So this year, rates are still very high at around 7%, but not skyrocketing like last year. At this time last year, rates were around, or I should say, back in May 2022, rates were around 5 to 5.5%, a huge increase from the threes we saw in 2020 and 2021. Whereas this year, rates have been hovering around 6 to 7% virtually all year. Therefore, because of this, it's possible to see positive year-over-year price growth later this year. Again, though, a lot could change over the next 6 months, though. But in my personal opinion, if inventory remains very, very low, and if rates maintain at around 7% or less, we're not going to see a giant decrease in home sold prices like we saw last year. And because of this, we could see positive price growth potentially, big word there, potentially, later this year. Okay, let's change gears slightly here and talk about more regarding what we're seeing right now at the statewide level regarding a lot of other metrics here. And of course, if you guys appreciate that additional analysis, please let me know, because that analysis took me all morning to make here. Anyways, let's talk about the average sale price to final list price ratio for May. That was 100%, meaning on average this May, out of all the closed home sales, a lag indicator, houses sold on average for the seller's final asking price. 1 year ago, that was a decrease of 3.4%. That's because back in May 2022, houses on average were selling for about 3.4% over the seller's asking price. Now they're selling for the asking price on average. Here's another way to look at this, because this May, 48.4% of all closed home sales sold above the seller's final list price. This has been increasing greatly ever since February this year, but at 48.4%, this is still much lower than the 69.6% we saw back in May 2022, and also below the 6-year high here that was set back in April at 72.9%. Okay, let me give you guys an update regarding housing inventory for the California housing market here. This is a very frustrating trend we're seeing right now, because if you guys want to see home prices absolutely tank in California, we want to see inventory levels absolutely skyrocketing like we did last year. So really starting in April and May, last year, inventory levels were absolutely skyrocketing. This is normal to see increases in inventory in the spring months, because inventory levels tend to peak around the early summer months. So for example, back in 2018, inventory levels peaked around July. 2019 also peaked around there as well. But last year, inventory levels were skyrocketing, whereas this year, we're only seeing now inventory levels increase for 2 consecutive months. Very low levels right now. And compared to 1 year ago, down 20.8%. So approximately 21% fewer homes to choose from that are for sale compared to May of 2022, which is night and day difference compared to the giant increases we saw back in 2022 through the early parts of 2023. I mean, what a difference 6 months makes, because during the winter months last year, inventory levels were up by about 80% compared to 12 months ago. Now they're down by nearly 21%. And the main reason for this limited amount of houses for sale, of course, is due to this lock-in effect, because a lot of people don't want to sell their houses and give up their historically low rates. A lot of people have rates of less than 3%, like myself, at 2.6%. Why would I sell my house and buy a new one and get a 7% rate? My rate right now is 2.6%, right? So in my personal opinion, we're not going to see a huge increase of new listings, or I should say, we're not going to see new listings skyrocket unless we get into a deep recession. A lot of people lose their jobs and they're actually forced to sell their houses. Right now, they're not forced to sell their houses. And that's why new listings are down big time. So speaking of that, look at this right here. Here's the year-over-year change in new listings, again, for existing single-family houses in California, because new listings have now decreased for 11 consecutive months now. And in fact, in May, they decreased by 28.1% year over year. And also, this is something eye-opening as well. 19,721 new listings. These are houses that are newly listed for the month of May. So around 20,000 new listings this May. This is at least a 5-year low, because 1 year ago, there was just over 25,000 new listings. 2021, 23,000, also around 23,000 in 2020 as well. But 2019, and 2018 pre-pandemic levels, around 32,000 new listings, whereas this year, just under 20,000. This means for the month of May this year, we're missing approximately 40% new listings compared to pre-pandemic levels in 2018 and 2019. And that's one reason why we're seeing inventory levels actually decrease from 12 months ago, down by 21%. A very big problem, again, if you guys want to see a housing market crash in California or for home prices decrease as well. Here's also a look at the share of reduced price listings in California at 28.8%. So this means approximately 3 out of every 10 houses for sale right now have reduced their asking prices already. The share at around 30% right now, or 28.8% to be exact. A very, very small, I just voice cracked there. A very small increase compared to April, as you can see right here. But this number right here, or this share, has been falling greatly ever since the winter months last year. In the winter months last year, the share was around 45%. Now it has decreased to 28.8%. And this, by the way, is actually lower than pre-pandemic levels back in May 2019, when the share was around 35%. And with that said, please comment below your biggest takeaways from today's video. Also, if you guys got any value out of this video whatsoever, then please hit the like button. I greatly appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate you. Hope you guys have an awesome day and look forward to seeing you in the next video.